Okay, welcome to the webinar today, folks. Intro to Export Strategy being presented by our own international trade specialist, Julia Montgomery. You are in good hands with her. Julia is an expert in her field, so if you are considering exporting, then you have come to the right place. My name is Allie Stevens, the Training and Marketing Coordinator with the Florida SBDC at UNF. If you are unfamiliar with the SBDC, we are part of a statewide network, and our mission is to help your small businesses grow and succeed. We do this by offering training and webinars like today, but also by providing no-cost confidential consulting on topics spanning all aspects of business management and growth, such as export marketing plans, readiness assessments, which Julia will talk about today, cash flow management, business planning, marketing and SEO, all that jazz. I will put our contact information in the chat box for your reference, the number to call, a website link to get started with a no-cost appointment with us for one-on-one consulting, to meet with Julia or one of our other small business consultants. And then the information will also be sent out in an email later this afternoon along with the recording link today, which brings me to quick housekeeping. If you have any questions, please type them into the question section of your control panel, and we will address them either throughout the presentation or at the end. There's no chat box function, so anything you want us to know or address, type it in the question section. We are recording this webinar, and the video will be sent out this afternoon. A link to the video will be sent out along with a quick survey to let us know how you thought everything went. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Julia. Take it away.
Thank you, Allie. That was a fabulous introduction. And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today to talk about export strategy. This is going to be just kind of a basic 101, just an introduction to the themes and some of the resources. As Allie mentioned, my name is Julia Montgomery, and I am the International Trade Specialist here at the Florida SBDC at UNF, and I'm also the Assistant Director over Special Programs. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the slide, and we'll go ahead and dive in. So just as a quick overview of the Florida SBDC and some of the no-cost consulting services that we offer, we provide assistance through every phase of the business life cycle. And so if you're looking at this slide and this arrow, you can see that from the development of your concept all the way through exit planning, we can provide support and assistance and even training options to help you move your business along, grow your business, and even phase out of your business whenever you're ready. And of course, as previously mentioned, these are no-cost consulting services. They're one-on-one. You get paired with a consultant based upon what your business needs are. It's a really great program, and it just assists us in facilitating our mission of helping small businesses grow and succeed. As part of this, we offer special programs, which, as you can see there, are government contracting, or our PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Center, international trade services, our small business resource network, and then we also offer bilingual and Spanish services as well. So these are some of our more specific, much more kind of niche services that we offer to businesses that might be seeking specific growth strategies or have very specific needs in their business. You're going to see throughout the presentation these little green boxes. Not all of them are clickable. Some of them are buttons. But essentially what they are is just a notification of somewhere where we may have additional resources where you can read further about a topic that we're covering on that slide, or it may simply indicate, kind of in flashing lights, hey, this is an area where if you need individual specific consulting, give me a call, send me an email, and we'll schedule a meeting around this topic. So I really just kind of wanted to isolate and draw attention to these areas where we can offer consulting services, as well as provide an avenue for you to access some of our resources. So our FSBDC Export Consulting. As the International Trade Specialist, I am not wholly, pigeonholed into exports. I do exports and imports. I would say about 70% of my consulting job is in exporting. But ever since the pandemic started and we've had so many sourcing and supply chain issues globally, I've actually been fielding quite a bit of import inquiries and consulting questions as well. But today's webinar is strictly going to focus on exporting. But I did want to go ahead and mention that if you do have import questions, you're welcome to schedule a meeting with me to discuss those as well. However, to kind of go off what we're talking about today with exporting, some of the services that we offer here at the SBDC at UNF regarding exports are helping you get through an export readiness assessment. So making sure that your business is export ready before you even begin the process of building an export strategy. Assessing potential market demand. There's a lot of ways that you can do that. There's a lot of resources and a lot of data out there that we can access to try to build an analytical profile for you to see where you should target your sales strategy abroad. Determining market viability, which is a big one. And that essentially means by the time I get my product to this country, is it even going to be, cost effective? Are people going to even be able to buy it? Is it going to be so much more expensive by the time you add all of the import fees and tariffs and taxes and extra fees that occur whenever you go through customs in a country? Is it even going to be viable? Is it even going to be something that people will reasonably think about buying? And then, of course, I'm going to provide some research and resources today during the presentation, but a lot of what I do as an export specialist or as an international trade specialist is in providing specific research and in helping identify resources that can help you grow your business internationally. And then another thing that we're going to talk about, and this is really kind of the capstone product that we offer, is the export marketing plan. And it is funded through a grant through Enterprise Florida, and we'll talk more about it later in the presentation. But it is basically, it encapsulates every topic that we're going to talk about today. It is a roadmap to export success. It's a roadmap to export markets. It analyzes market entry strategy. It analyzes agreements and commissions, compliance. So much goes into the export marketing plan, and it's a really fabulous way for new to export companies to get sort of a really in-depth introduction to export strategy. So we're gonna go ahead. Major takeaways today, we're just gonna go over why you should export, what constitutes export readiness for your business, how small businesses are currently exporting their products and services, and this is based off my experience with my current client list. And then some of the resources that are available that can assist you along your way to export success. And so these could be other agencies that provide international trade consulting. These could be trade associations. These could be websites that have educational resources. We're going to list a lot. It's going to be quite a bit thrown at you, kind of like drinking from a fire hose, but hang on, and then always know that you're going to get a copy of this presentation at the end, and it will be uploaded as an on-demand presentation on our website as well. So you can always refer back to it. And then of course, you can always contact me if you have any specific questions. So let's talk realistically about exports. It's more work, it's more risk. So why should you really even consider doing it? And the answer to that question is going to be individual. It's going to be specific to you and what your goals for your business are, what your risk appetite is, and what your personality is like. So as you can see, the answer is multifaceted, and there's a lot of answers to this question. Obviously, if you're expanding your customers out into the global marketplace, you're going to grow your client base, you're going to grow your sales, potentially going to grow your profits. One benefit to that is that you're probably going to create more jobs, and history and experience has taught us that exporting companies actually pay higher wages than their non-exporting counterparts, which is a really nice economic development result. You're going to create a more competitive business just in general. You can bet that if you are considering staying domestic, if you're not interested in making the foray out into the global marketplace, if you're not interested in doing business with, even Canada or Mexico, or just kind of dipping your toe in the export pond, there are competitors here in the United States, competitors that you currently have that are considering that and may already be doing that. And then you've also got to think about businesses abroad that are in your industry that could potentially infringe upon your market space here. So there are companies in other countries that are potentially going to be thinking about doing business with the US that could grab up some of your market share. So it's basically that old adage, if you're not growing, you're dying. This is part of that. This is part of a long-term economic development strategy for you and your business. Something that we've seen in previous years, the pandemic was kind of a atypical example because something happened on a global scale. But what we see a lot of the time is countries have these economic fluctuations or natural disasters or some kind of shortage in a specific industry. And it makes it hard for you to depend upon the market, your domestic market, maybe a market that you've depended upon heavily previously, and things have changed. So it's always a good idea to be thinking about other markets as a way to diversify your client portfolio in the event that the US domestic market for your industry takes a hit. People aren't buying for some reason. Maybe they'll still be buying in, South American countries. Maybe they'll still be buying in African countries, Asian countries. It's just a really good way to kind of not depend on, put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. Along with that comes the broadening of the customer base and then the extension of a life cycle of your product. And this isn't necessarily something that extends to all products, but particularly with tech type products. Something that may be phasing out or trending out in the US marketplace may still have quite a bit, of a growth life cycle somewhere else, because the US tends to be, getting and using technology at a higher rate than some other countries. Some other countries use and, have much more higher consumption trends of technology than even the United States. But perhaps, that old Android phone that, is 2 or 3 iterations old and is no longer considered cool here in the United States, maybe you can sell that into another country where the life cycle is longer and they don't have access to the trendier products as quickly as we do. And then, of course, mitigating seasonal fluctuations. This is of particular importance for products like, we're here in Florida. We have a lot of products that are popular during the warm, sunny summer months. And then in the winter, they take a big hit. I'm thinking about stuff you wear and use at the beach, swimming products, camping products, things like that. You may want to look at selling into countries that are in the Southern Hemisphere because the seasons are, opposite of ours. So whenever we're having our summer, they're having their, winter and vice versa. So you can actually extend that seasonal life cycle by strategically trying to access those countries whenever we would be hitting our natural slow cycle. And then, of course, the last but absolutely not least is embracing a rewarding challenge. And this is something that those with that entrepreneurial spirit, those that are interested in being mavericks and meeting new people, and they really just want to grab the bull by the horns and grow their business to its maximum potential. This is a great way to do that, because with every country and with every industry in every country, you're going to experience a completely different process. Maybe not a completely different process, but you're going to have very different situations. The environment may be different. The tone of a negotiation may be different. It's just kind of it's an interesting way to kind of stay on your toes, and it's very rewarding. I have a lot of exporting clients that just really love the export side of their business. In fact, I have several clients that now that they are successfully exporting is really all they want to give their attention to, because they find it so rewarding and so enjoyable. And they just love traveling when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, and they love meeting new people around the world. So export readiness assessment. And this is kind of one of these things that we can work together on. If you're not sure if your company's export ready, this is just kind of a quick overview to help you decide if you are. And again, you see this little green box here. If after today's webinar, you're still not sure if you are export ready, you can always come in to see us for a financial review or an export readiness session to get kind of a soundboard to see if we think that you're export ready as well. So what this means is there's kind of 4 phases here, and that's organizational readiness, your company readiness, your financial readiness, and your product readiness. So for the organizational side, in the organizational section here, that means is the company hierarchy and agreement on pursuing an aggressive export strategy? That's one of the first questions I ask. Is leadership on board? Because if leadership isn't on board, you're basically already dead in the water. You have to get that buy-in at the front end because you're going to be expending resources to develop your export strategy. So that also comes along with making sure that your executives understand the time commitment to realize international success, and that they're aware that they're going to have to dedicate a considerable amount of human and financial resources into this trade expansion strategy. Company readiness, so that would be more like, do you already have a strong domestic brand? So have you had success domestically in the US marketplace? Is it well known? Do people know it? Do people associate a high degree of efficiency and customer service and quality with your product? Does your company have considerable know-how in their production processes? Do you have a well-established customer service process? Are you comfortable with that? Are you comfortable with fielding, double or triple the amount of sales that you're going to get through your expansion strategy with your processes that you currently have in place? Do you have a competitive advantage that you think you can leverage to support international expansion? So do you think you can transfer it? Do you think that you can, grow the competitive advantage that you have here and continue to benefit from it in other marketplaces? And then, of course, do you have the capacity? And that's not just production capacity, that's equipment, human resources, human capital, shipping and receiving capabilities, all the things that your interdepartmental organization work to make your company successful domestically. You're going to have to make sure that you have capacity to expand all those capabilities on an international scale. And then do you have someone that is going to be the project owner of this? Do you have someone that's going to be the go-to person to handle international orders? Because you do have to have someone that is owning that project, or else a lot of times things just don't get done the way you want them to get done. So financial readiness is pretty self-explanatory, I think. Do you have working capital? Are you in a positive growth position or positive capital position? Can you leverage that capital to field an international sales expansion strategy? Do you understand that your strategy may require using short-term profits in order to achieve long-term gains? So that means, in the US, we tend to have kind of like this immediate, this like very quick, laser focused point of view. We want immediate results. And in the international scale, results may take a little bit longer to realize because a lot of countries are much more relationship involved than we are. We're very contract oriented. We can put a contract in front of a total stranger, sign it, and be happy with that business arrangement. A lot of countries want to have to, they're going to want to get to know you. They're going to want to get to know your company, and it's going to take time to build that relationship up. Are you currently using export financing or any other international payment mechanisms? Are you aware of that? Do you need training on that? And can the company wait longer for international payments? Can you wait longer for those receivables? If you're used to getting receivables in 30 days, you can expect that that's going to take quite a bit longer for international sales. Sometimes 60, sometimes 90. Usually just depends on the relationship with the client and the experience that you have with the company. And then product readiness. So are you going to have to adapt your product or service for another market? And very often, we sort of have this very unintentional ethnocentric way of thinking about things, which is, it's great for me here, it's going to be great for everybody else elsewhere. And that's very often not the case. I can't tell you how many comical situations have arisen because someone has come to me on the import side with a brand that they want to sell into the United States, and it's just, you know, the word's really funny, or the word does not communicate, the brand does not communicate what the client wants it to communicate. You know, a good example of that is when they tried to sell the Nova car into Mexico, and Nova in Spanish means no go. Well, nobody bought it, you know, so of course you're going to have to adapt that. You're going to have to take into consideration cultural and language and, you know, local preferences before you enact your aggressive sales strategy. Again, does your competitive advantage apply to the international market? Something that may be very popular here may not have any potential elsewhere. And then does the company recognize that made in the USA carries an internationally recognized standard of quality? So you want to be upholding that brand recognition with a made in the USA product. So how are other small businesses currently exporting? And this is something that we've obviously seen a huge uptick in over the last, you know, what is it, 10 months now? The pandemic eliminated a lot of brick and mortar options for businesses. And so we've seen this sort of rush on the door for online sales. I think that even before, you know, pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, it was very important for you to have a very nice, very well done, clear and concise website, because it's basically your online business card. If you think about it, anytime someone refers something to you, anytime you hear about something in the news, on the TV, on the radio, if it strikes your interest, what are you going to do? You're going to go on your phone and you're going to Google it. You're going to look at their website. And if their website looks bad, if it looks like it, you know, they didn't take the time to make it look professional, or if it looks insecure, that's terrible. You know, you don't want to buy something online and think that your information is going to be stolen. Your website is incredibly important. So I would say that is kind of the first place that you start if you're interested in international sales, making sure that you have a nice, well put together website. And we're seeing that a lot of businesses are getting started that way, because if you have a website, if you're online, you already are exposing yourself to international markets, because people can actually Google you, people can actually find you. And hopefully you'll be setting up other parameters, other things to help your international buyers find you. And so in line with that, getting the most out of your website would involve making sure that your website is search engine optimized. And so that is making sure that people that are looking for your business domestically and people that are looking for your business internationally are using keywords that you've built into your website. And so if you are selling, you know, hand crocheted kitty socks, and you type in hand crocheted kitty socks, your website is the first one that pops up. Or at least on that first page. If it's not on that first page, it's like it doesn't exist. Another thing that's important is making sure that the aesthetics of your website are done well. They don't have to be, you know, you don't have to spend just a ton of money on, you know, this really expensive graphic design company. You just really want it to look clean. You don't want it to look crowded. And then something to consider for the international market is what looks good here and what looks professional here may not be communicating the same message to other countries. And so a good example of that is if you've ever been on Alibaba, if you've ever been on AliExpress or any of the other like major Chinese selling websites or e-commerce sites or things like that, you see lots of bright colors. You see a lot of logos, you see a lot of graphics. They're all kind of, you know, squashed together on the web page. I'm probably dating myself, but like I think of like Lisa Frank notebooks. Like there's a lot going on those websites. That is their preferred style. That's a very Chinese way of, you know, marketing and building your website, and that's their preferred way to you know, sell themselves online. So if you were going to adapt a website to Chinese buyers or to a Chinese, you know, business, then you would want to take those things into consideration. What are the local aesthetics? What are people gravitating towards in the local marketplace? And then, of course, functionality and formatting is super important. You want to make sure that if you click a button, if you are at the, you know, top fold or the bottom fold, all of the information that you need is readily available. the links work. If that's not working, people can actually come to your website, click on something, and if it doesn't work, they're gone, they're in the wind. And so you've basically lost a potential lead. So it's really important that it works the way it's supposed to work. Language and translation is another thing to consider. People often will say, you know, I've got to get my website translated, and I've got my friend or my cousin who speaks, you know, Spanish as a second language. I'm going to get him to translate it. And it's like, okay, that's a bad idea. First of all, you always want, if you can get one, a native speaker, a native Spanish speaker for this specific example, because it's always going to be done better. It's better actually to not translate than to translate it poorly. So you want it done as professionally as possible. And so it is worth usually spending the resources to get a very professional, locally driven language translation. And then the messaging. You know, if you want to sell to international buyers, make sure somewhere on your website it says, for international buyers, click here. Or make sure that in your contact section you have a, you know, international sales rep, you know, listed. Make sure that you have the little flags at the top of your website so that people know that you're selling specifically to certain marketplaces. You want to advertise that you're open to that. And then of course, shipping. If you're gonna be shipping internationally, you need to make sure that your website is formatted for international addresses. You need to make sure that you know, say on your shopping cart that this is where we sell, this is where we'll ship to, global shipping to Canada and Mexico. Be very specific about that, but also be very aware that you have to put that messaging out there, or else people will just assume that you don't do it and they'll move on. Another really popular way that small businesses get starting with exporting is obviously through this, you know, 10-pound or 100,000-pound gorilla in the room, which is Amazon. So many businesses get started in the global marketplace with Amazon. And it's really done wonders for small businesses, because businesses that didn't even think about selling to international buyers now can do it with relative ease once they've set up their Amazon profile and they've gone through the process of listing their products and services. A lot of small businesses, a lot of people that, you know, manufacture in other countries and then drop ship directly to buyers here domestically, or drop ship directly to buyers all over the world, use Amazon for these purposes. And it's, you know, it's kind of a, you know, plug and play, especially if you use Fulfilled by Amazon, which is you're going to ship your product to an Amazon warehouse, your product's going to be eligible for Amazon Prime, and a lot of the logistics are taken care of, you know, for an added price in that package. Obviously, there are some drawbacks there. This is definitely a B2C website. You're not going to be selling to other businesses usually. You're not going to be selling bulk orders. You're selling usually directly to the consumer. If you opt not to use FBA, then you're still going to be having to, you know, go through the process of building a logistics and fulfillment process into it and managing that fulfillment. Obviously, Amazon is a little bit bureaucratically laden, and that's probably me being a little PC about it. But the processes can be a little intense. I've had some businesses that have struggled with making sure that they're staying in line with, you know, Amazon's, you know, listing requirements. They've had trouble with the functionality of the website. They've had trouble with the functionality of their online store. They've had, you know, bad things happen with reviews and competitors, and they didn't really feel like they had, you know, a great way to amend the situation, because Amazon is such a large company and it's so hard to get, you know, a customer service rep. It's just kind of like a living, breathing thing on its own. And so you are basically exchanging ease of export or ease of process for a lack of control. You know, you're basically handing over a lot of that control to Amazon and letting them take over the process. And then you are basically kind of going to be dealing with whatever happens along the way. You're along for the ride. And that's not to say that Amazon is bad. I think Amazon's great. I love that a lot of businesses are exporting via Amazon. You just need to be aware that there are pros and cons to doing business on Amazon. And again, that little green box there. If you want more discussion or you want some assistance with figuring out if Amazon is right for you, we actually do have an archived exporting webinar, and that does actually link to it on our SBDC website. So you can click there and review some of the basics of using Amazon to exports. And if you have any additional questions, of course, you can reach out. Some other ways that small businesses are exporting, and these are some of the more systematic ways that businesses are exporting. These would be more B2B. These would be larger, bulk orders. These would be establishing a strategic plan with a partner abroad or a buyer that you plan to do repeat business with abroad. You can enlist the assistance of export management companies or export trading companies, which essentially are like third-party export departments for you. You basically, say, okay, here, you pay me for this, here's the shipment, you take care of it, I'm out. So you may not get as much profit from that because you're paying someone to handle that whole process for you, but you're also out the headache of dealing with the entire export process. Piggyback exporting, which is, if you've got someone, we used the hand crocheted kitty socks earlier, but maybe you also have a business partner, or someone that sells shoes, or someone that sells little other apparel type items, and they're already exporting and they want to include your crocheted socks in their repertoire abroad. You can partner with them and you can piggyback with them through their current export strategy to penetrate international markets. I know it seems like that means well, I'm not really doing it. That would mean that my partner's doing it, but that is actually considered another indirect export. So you would be exporting. The most common way that businesses are exporting to other businesses abroad is through agents and distributors. Agents is, like it says, it's a sales agent. That's someone who arranges a sale. They say, hey, you in the US, I know someone in the UK, and I'm going to arrange this sale between you two, and I'm going to take a commission for it, and then I'm out. They're not handling any of your property. They're not doing any of the logistics or shipping. They're not involved in that process at all once they've arranged the sale. On the other hand, you have distributors who are essentially taking ownership of the product. They've got a warehouse. This would be someone in the UK that is saying, okay, yeah, send me a half a container of your crocheted items, and I'm going to warehouse them here. I have a sales team here, and we're going to sell them into the market, and you may not know kind of what happens to these after I take ownership of this shipment. Some other ways would be like through franchising or licensing, which is, selling technology or selling a process and sort of getting paid for your intellectual property. And then foreign direct investment, which is, we've been doing business in the UK for 20 years. Our presence has grown, year over year, and we want to set up a manufacturing facility in the UK and sell direct into the UK from that facility. So usually by the time they, when people come to me, they're not ready for franchising or FDI. They're more looking for, an EMC or a piggyback partner, or an agent or a distributor. These are just a few ways that SMEs are meeting international buyers. And obviously this landscape has changed quite a bit since COVID has interrupted everything. Trade shows are normally a really good way to meet industry partners and people that are interested in similar products. International shows and domestic shows that have an international audience. You can enlist the help of your local economic development agency or the commercial service for a matchmaker type situation where they're going to pair you up through a trade mission with potential partners. I have a lot of clients that use LinkedIn, and LinkedIn I think has been getting more and more traction for international relationships and international buys or international sales because people have had to resort to that through the pandemic. People have gone more online and people have gotten more savvy at using LinkedIn, and they've gotten more creative at using LinkedIn, and they may even be paying for the feed LinkedIn services to assist them in establishing those leads. Of course, word of mouth is still a very valuable channel for meeting international buyers. If you've got a very satisfied customer, or if you've got a very satisfied partner somewhere, asking them to basically evangelize your product. Sometimes that's a great way to get new clients or get new leads. Industry connections and associations, an industry association or a trade association, depending upon how involved you are and how involved the association is sometimes a great way to meet people that can either be, you know, good collaborative partners with you or good sales leads. And then, of course, economic development agencies, as I previously mentioned. States, obviously, every state here in the United States has its own economic development agency, but then countries usually have their own economic development agency as well that may have their own trade show or trade mission that you can consult with them about, and then, you know, become an active participant in and begin picking up leads in those countries. So how are SMEs getting paid? And this is something that we could talk about for a long time. This is something that most people have a lot of interest in, particularly when they're talking about, you know, getting started with an export strategy. There's a lot of ways to get paid internationally. Some are more secure, some are less secure, some are more expensive, some are less expensive. And it all depends on, you know, whether you're the exporter or the importer, and again, what your appetite for risk is, and your relationship with your buyer. So for the most part, the United States is kind of well known for cash in advance. We are, you know, for how contract oriented we are, we usually, especially when we're getting started with a new export strategy, we're saying, okay, yeah, you pay me the full amount up front and I'll send it to you. Or you pay me, you know, 60 up front and I'll send it to you, and then you can send me the 40% after. Most countries are aware that the US operates that way, but I will say that internationally, most countries are much more open. They have a much more, they're much more likely to operate with open account. And because of that, that puts the US and US exporters at somewhat of a competitive disadvantage, because if you're not opening, or if you're not offering open terms, and someone has, you know, you and another partner that does offer open terms, then they're obviously going to pick, you know, the payment mechanism that affords them the least amount of risk or is the easiest for them to work with. And one way to mitigate that is through purchasing export credit insurance, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes when we get to Exim Bank. But then we have some of these other options, such as consignment, documentary collections, letters of credit. And as you can see, it's kind of a spectrum of risk and cost here. And I've had clients use pretty much every single type of these, every single option here. I have some clients that operate almost exclusively through letters of credit, which are very bureaucratically laden. You have to make sure that those are done with a high degree of efficiency. You know, no I's not dotted, no T's not crossed. But it's a very secure way to do business for an exporter. And then, of course, you have the other end with open account and consignment, which is much less, you know, probably much less expensive, but it's going to be a much higher degree of risk for the exporter. So another green box here. So if you want to review some of these international payment mechanisms, please let me know. I'm happy to arrange a session and we can go over what these are, what these entail for the exporter versus the importer, what the level of risk is, and what the anticipated cost would be for using each of these payment mechanisms. So how do you get started with your export strategy? This always starts with research. There's a ton of things that go into figuring out where you should target your strategy, which markets should be the main focal point of your export strategy. And again, it just starts with research. So you can research your web traffic and any previous inquiries that you've had from abroad. You can look at trade flow data, and that's UN Comtrade and the harmonized tariff system of the US. Those are probably words that you've never heard before. Again, this is something that you could come to me and we could look at. Trade flow data is essentially looking at, you know, what commodities are being imported and exported by which countries, and you know, what the growth rate looks like, and what the volume and the value of the shipments look like. Whether we have free trade agreements with certain countries. So a free trade agreement is a great place to start, you know, if you're trying to narrow down potential target markets for your product or service. If we have a free trade agreement in place, the wheels have basically been greased, and there's a good chance that you're not going to experience the higher import tariffs that you might encounter when doing business with a non-free trade agreement country. And there's a lot of other benefits that come along with doing business with free trade agreement countries as well. So country-specific data, and this is, macroeconomic indicators and demographic indicators. A big one is GDP. A big one is population. You want to factor in the economics of the country. Are they going to be able to afford a U.S. produced imported product on a mass scale? What their consumer habits are. Looking at industry reports and data, we have, as you can see there in the green box, we have a plethora of databases here for industry reports. So we can pull through IBIS World or Euromonitor or even DNB Hoovers to see kind of what the global industry outlook is for your business and the industry that you cover. Whether they speak the same language, and this isn't always a big deal. In fact, a lot of the time I have clients that don't consider language into where they start, but I have some that prefer to get started in English-speaking countries just because it's easier and they don't have to worry about the translation. Though you do still sometimes have to worry about the cultural implications, because just because a country speaks English or has English as one of its main languages doesn't necessarily mean that the consumer habits are the same or that the business culture is the same. But it at least kind of starts you at an easier position than if the language was completely different. And then, of course, proximity. You want to factor in how far away your potential buyer is, or how long it's going to take you to get there. Or, we're talking about geographic proximity here. You can also consider how difficult the business culture is in a specific country and whether you want to engage with a country that has a high degree of difficulty for doing business. Again, if you check out this green box, these are just some of the ways that I can work with you to help you identify where you should get started. These are some of my research resources. I can help you with a trade flow analysis. We can look at free trade agreements that the U.S. currently has. We can do a country fit indicator review. There's just a lot of ways that we can look at the data out there to help you find out where you should get started with your export strategy. And then, of course, I want to introduce you to a few of the export resources that are out there. So these are 3 of our major export resource partners. Of course, well, I guess it's 2 of our major export resource partners. We're here at the top, America's SBDC, Florida. And then you have Enterprise Florida here on the left. And then you have the U.S. Commercial Service here on the right. And these are, we call it the trifecta of international trade in Florida. And so the way I think about it is this: you have a funnel, and at the top of the funnel, where it's really broad and you have a lot of different types of questions, import related questions, export related questions, supply chain, financial analysis, all the things that go into your export readiness assessment. That's where the SBDC is, because you can come in and get assistance from me, international trade specialist. You can get assistance from, my fellow consultants who may have specializations in web development. They may have specializations in financial analysis, marketing and branding. And, there's just all kinds of ways we can help you prepare for your international expansion through our consulting services. Then you get a little further down the V, and you've got Enterprise Florida, which is our state economic development agency, and they actually have representatives in other countries. They have 14 international offices in 13 countries. And so they can actually connect you to some of your potential target markets through boots on the ground expertise. And then they also have grants and incentives for trying to motivate Florida businesses to get involved with international trade and exports. And then you come a little bit further down the V, the cone, and at the bottom of the cone, you have the U.S. Commercial Service, and they are the federal agency that is tasked with assisting U.S. businesses with exports. And so they only assist with exports, but they have a fantastic variety of resources and tools to assist you with that. And they have, over 100 reps, or they have reps in over 100 countries. So they have a fantastic amount of market penetration and can really get you some local or, more country-centered information and expertise for, to kind of help you move along with your export strategy and establishing those relationships with potential buyers. This little green button here just says partner introduction, because what happens is I have people come to me quite often and we'll get to talking and I'll figure out, hey, you would actually be a great candidate for Enterprise Florida's Target Sector Trade Show Grant program. And so I'll make an introduction to Enterprise Florida, or I'll be talking to someone and they're ready to interface with a potential buyer in another country, and I want them to have, in-country expertise, and I really want them to get a local perspective, and so I will refer them to the commercial service so they can start making those connections and talking to those representatives in country to make that assessment and to field that relationship. So these are, I work with Larry Bernaski with Enterprise Florida and Jorge Arce with the commercial service very often. You'll often see us together when we are in person at events together. We work well together. We don't work on commission, and we offer varying degrees and levels of expertise within the international trade ecosystem. So it's just a really great relationship. Again, commercial service is the trade promotion arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce International Trade Administration. They have professionals in over 100 U.S. cities and in more than 75 countries. And again, they only provide export assistance. So if you have any questions about importing, they really can't field those inquiries. Just wanted to point you to trade.gov, which is their website. And they have a fantastic amount of educational resources. They review some of their tools that they use whenever they are making introductions to potential leads abroad. Some of those things are like their international market check, their international company profile, their partner search, their gold key service. These are their established processes and their established resources for getting U.S. businesses, in touch with potential U.S. buyers. And I would encourage you to go to that website and review what their current portfolio of resources are, so that you're familiar with that. And then, of course, as I previously mentioned, we have Enterprise Florida. That's our state economic development agency. They have all kinds of incentives and grants to motivate Florida manufacturers and service providers into growing their businesses. And one way that they do that is through exports. And so they're very export motivated. And they also are interested in fielding investment opportunities in Florida. So they're obviously very centered on Florida growth and Florida jobs. Along with that, this is, as we mentioned previously in the presentation, the export marketing plan is really kind of the end-all be-all for international trade research for a new exporter. And this is funded through a grant provided by Enterprise Florida. And what it does is it basically takes you through the entire export education process, and it also identifies high demand target markets or really good country fit markets. And so I'll walk you through kind of some of the categories and some of the areas where we focus and really drill down into that export education and the export introduction into target markets through the export marketing plan. But it's a fabulous tool. We've had many happy and successful clients obtain an export marketing plan. They generally take about 2 months to write, and what that really means is that there's a process. I'll come in and I will ask you a bunch of questions about your business, what your export goals are. We'll go over an export readiness assessment to make sure that you are in fact ready for an export strategy. And then I sit down and I write an export marketing plan that is totally and uniquely tailored to your business and what your goals are. And then you end up with this very tailored, very bespoke report at the end that is basically a roadmap to where you should go and how you should get there. And these are some of the sections that are currently in the report that I write. We look at your objectives, we look at your marketing model and how we can evolve that, or how we can adapt that to international markets. We'll look at a competitor sample, domestic and international. We'll perform an in-depth market analysis, and that's part of the looking at, the items that we discussed before, country indicators, so demographic and macroeconomic indicators, consumer data, things that are specific to your industry, ease of doing business rankings, language fit, geographic proximity, all these things that go into an analytical profile to give you a ranking of countries based upon what you would like to do and where you would like to go. Looking at the potential market entry strategy and tariffs, landed cost calculation, all the things that go into figuring out where you should go and what it's going to take to get there. This button links to the EMP application. So if you are interested in something like this and you think that you might be a good fit for this, I would encourage you to reach out to me first. And at the end of the presentation, you'll see my contact information. But if you want to go ahead and submit an EMP application, you can. We are currently taking applications for 2021. And we actually have waived the fee for the export marketing plan through 2021. So normally it's a $5,000 product that if you meet the qualifications for the grant, Enterprise Florida covers $4,500, leaving the final price tag to the client at only $500. But as part of our COVID relief package, we're actually waiving that $500. So if you meet the qualifications for the grant provided by Enterprise Florida, you actually can get this for free if you meet those requirements. So it's a great deal through 2021. If you think that this might be something that you'd be interested in, or that could benefit your business, and you're legitimately interested in pursuing an export strategy, I would encourage you to either apply or to get more information on this through me. And this is just a very small snapshot of the type of analysis that I do whenever I come up with the ranking of countries that goes into the export marketing plan. These are those country indicators that we were talking about. We're looking at maximum average tariff for import of a product, the logistics performance index score, Google Market Finder score, housing market number of completions per year. So these are all very specific indicators that I pulled for these individual countries. I score them and I weight them, and then we end up with a total weighted score in an Excel sheet that basically provides you this analytical profile of ranked countries and where we think you should go, top 10, top 30, based upon actual information and actual data pulled from secondary sources. Some of the plans that I've done in the past, just to show you that, it really doesn't matter the type of industry that you're in. It really only matters that it's a product that we see competitive potential in abroad. But I've done this type of research for so many different types of companies. And this is just a sample of the type of companies that I've done these plans for. So like medical devices, craft beer, defense training, apparel manufacturing, chemicals, really quite a broad variety of products here. And I've even done quite a few service plans as well. So really runs the gamut. And I would encourage you, if you think you've got a competitive product and you think that this might be a good fit, let me know and we'll talk about it. And then of course, this button links to some of our previous international trade and EMP success stories. If you want to see some of the companies that we've taken through this process before and that have benefited from the export marketing plan. These are a few other of the Enterprise Florida trade grants. I'm not going to go into great detail here just for the sake of time, but there are lots of resources. There are even more resources now because COVID kind of prompted Enterprise Florida to introduce a lot of virtual grant options, a lot of virtual networking options. But these are all ways to potentially meet leads, potentially exhibit at a trade show and get reimbursement for that, potentially localize your website for a specific market, or maybe you need to get some type of certificate to do business in a particular market. These are reimbursable grants for undergoing those activities. And so I would encourage you to take a look at what's available and see if it would be a good fit for you. And again, I'm happy to discuss any of these one-on-one with you at a later date. And this is just some of the basic grant qualifications. Most of the grants have the same qualifications. You've got to be a Florida business, products produced or services rendered from a Florida location. Minimum of being in business for 2 years, produced in the state, which I previously mentioned, must be a small business, which is usually 1 to 500 employees per SBA guidelines, and then have at least 51% US content. And what this normally looks like with my relationship with Enterprise Florida and the commercial service is businesses or clients will come in to talk to someone at Enterprise Florida or someone at the commercial service, and they won't have that level of education, that export experience to prepare them for an export strategy. And so they'll refer them to me to do an export marketing plan with them. And so that helps us kind of provide that export education foundation, as well as a roadmap to markets that we think are going to have high potential for that business. And so what they'll do is we'll go through the export marketing plan process, we'll deliver the plan, and then once they've prioritized those target markets as presented in the plan, they'll then go on to do a target sector trade show, or they'll do a matchmaker, or they'll update their website, localize their website, or go for some type of certification so that they can do business in a recommended country. So it usually starts with the export marketing plan and then moves on to these other reimbursable programs and grants. If you don't qualify for the export marketing plan, I do kind of this smaller scale product called an international market study. I've actually had a couple businesses be really successful with the international market study. It doesn't take nearly as long. It's not nearly as time intense or research intense, but it does provide 2 or 3 markets to get started with, and it's usually a pretty good way to get that foundational information that you need and get started. And this would be for, like I said, businesses that don't necessarily qualify for the EFI grants, which would be like distributors and wholesalers, people that don't manufacture in Florida, but that do have a Florida business. Another resource that I just want to make a quick introduction to is Exim Bank, and this is the export credit insurance that we previously mentioned, which is a way to do business with open account. And so you can insure your receivables usually up to 95% by partnering with Exim Bank, and it's a fantastic way to be more competitive internationally. Our Florida rep is Elena Mendez. And if you are doing business with partners abroad and you want to offer open account, but you want to have the situation be more secure, and you're interested in that export credit insurance, let me know and I'm happy to make an introduction. And then, of course, just want you to be aware that there are some SBA trade financing resources available to you as well through the Export Express Loan, the Export Working Capital Loan, and the International Trade Loan. This first one is basically a revolving line of credit. And these last 2 are essentially term loans based upon different things and different uses of the funds. But if you want more information on that, please let me know. I'm happy to go over what those are. And I can also make an introduction to our SBA Trade Finance rep, Sandra Mortas, who is in the Tampa region. If you want more information about these vehicles, you can click on this link as well. And then I also wanted to introduce you to the District Export Council. We have a District Export Council here. It's called the Central North Florida District Export Council, and that entails pretty much from Orlando up. We also have a Southern Florida deck, which is mainly, like the Miami, La Broward area. And so this is a great organization to meet other people that are in the export ecosystem. If you have questions that are specific to a specific industry, and if you're interested in getting involved in trade promotional policies or advocating on behalf of the U.S. exporters, this would be a great organization to look at and potentially get involved with. And you can click on the link here to learn more about us. And then these are just a few resources that I recommend for getting started with your export education. Trade.gov, again, that's free to use. That's the ITA's website. Export U is also free to use. It's got quite a great amount of webinars and training resources available. The Basic Guide to Exporting is the U.S. Commercial Services ebook, which is a good way to kind of educate yourself on obviously the basics of exporting. And then The Global Entrepreneur, which is a book that I reference quite often by James Foley, which kind of introduces you to a realistic, you know, the realities of doing business internationally. It kind of gives you a layman's perspective and really talks to you in a way that's easy to comprehend. And then one of my favorite books, which is Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands, which is basically educating you on cultural implications and best practices for doing business with other countries. So it's a lot of fun to read. And so here is my contact information. Again, my name is Julia Montgomery, if you didn't get that before. I'm the International Trade Specialist here. I would love to hear from you if you have any questions. You can register for consulting at that link below, or you can email me directly with my email address there. And I just appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I know we're over the 2 o'clock mark, but if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know right now. I have a couple minutes to answer 1 or 2 if you have a few.
I don't have any questions just yet, but we'll just wait for folks to just type in their responses.
Okay. Well, again, if we don't have questions, that's perfectly fine. I've taken up, you know, the full hour. Again, it was a lot of information. I would encourage you to reach out if you have any questions about any of the information that was presented here today. I'm happy to go over any of this, and I look forward to seeing you and hopefully working with you in the future.
Thank you, Julia. Yeah, I don't see any questions coming in, and it seems like you covered everything. It might just be info overload for our folks. It was a very thorough presentation, so thank you very much. As we mentioned at the beginning, everybody, this has been recorded. We will send you a link if you need to refer back. And then if you have questions, you can always reach out to Julia, maybe set up an appointment, get some one-on-one time to go a little bit more in depth about how these apply to your business. Is an excellent option for you. So I think, Julia, we'll go ahead and call it a day. Nobody's typing in. Like I said, we had a small crowd, so that's all right.
Okay.
But yeah, so thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And Julia, thank you for an awesome presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.